All right, so this first one is a variation on the Oliver Nelson classic augmented scale pattern, which I'm sure you've heard before. That's probably the most common pattern within this scale, and I didn't include that one in this video. I was hoping to just include stuff that people haven't encountered before. So if you are unfamiliar with that one and you want to learn that one, I'm sure if you just type in online like Oliver Nelson augmented scale pattern, I'm sure there's plenty of videos explaining that. But the way this one works is the Oliver Nelson one is major arpeggios in major thirds with just like a half step above each starting note. But what we changed in this one to give it a little bit of a different sound is instead of doing major arpeggios, you can actually also do minor arpeggios in major thirds as well. So now instead of doing G major, E flat major, and B major, we have G minor, E flat minor, and B minor. And all we're doing is this. So we start with the G minor arpeggio, but what we're doing is we're starting a half step above the first note, which in this case is B flat. We're starting on B, and we slide down a half step. So technically we're starting on the major third. If we're looking at each of these in terms of the arpeggios that they are, we're starting on the major third and then sliding down to the minor third. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one we're going to do E flat minor, but we're going to start on G, slide down to the G flat. That's what we got so far. And that fingering, I'm doing my pointer finger on G flat, my ring finger on E flat, and my middle finger on B flat. Then here we have B minor, but we're starting on D sharp. With our middle finger, pull off to D, and then middle finger goes on B and F sharp. I guess I have a couple different fingerings I do for this one. It depends on where I'm at, but I also might do this sometimes for the E flat minor, just my pointer finger and then middle and pointer. I would actually prefer that. It sets it up better. So those are our three arpeggios. Then we repeat the same thing down an octave. So now we do the G minor starting on B, pull off from B to B flat, ring finger on G, ring finger on D. Then middle finger goes to G on the fourth string, pull off to G flat, and then ring finger on E flat and B flat. That's our E flat minor arpeggio. And then the last one, ring finger on E flat, pull off to D. This is going to be our B minor, and then pinky on B, pointer finger goes down to F sharp. So the whole pattern. All right, this next one I got from Jonathan Kreisberg. He plays this on the live recording of Autumn in New York. Really cool sounding pattern. And he actually just uses it over a straight major 7 chord, which is cool. So you can utilize a lot of these patterns over major chords as well, just to get a little bit more of an outside sound because you're adding the sharp 5 and the sharp 9 to the major tonality. So this one, similar to the last one, it's going to be boiled down to 3 arpeggios and major thirds. In this case, we're doing major arpeggios again, but there's always a little passing note in between. So a lot of these patterns can be boiled down to just arpeggios and major thirds with, you know, some in-between notes. So like if we just boil this down, it's yeah, it's major 7 arpeggios in major thirds, but it has these passing notes. So that's a cool thing, is you can play major 7 chords in major thirds. So let's say we're playing G augmented scale. Let's do like G, B, F sharp, 1, 3, 7. Move it up to B. to E flat. Really mysterious, kind of ominous sound. Very cool though, very cool sound. So we're starting with B major 7, but we're starting on the 5th, so each of these starts on the 5th of the arpeggio, and we slide up to the sharp 5th, and then up to the 7th. I'm speaking in terms of intervals right now. So F sharp, slide up to G, and then pinky on the A sharp. And then pointer finger back to F sharp, and then your middle finger goes up to the D sharp and up to the B. That's the first pattern. Second one, we're doing G major 7. But once again, start on the 5th, interval-wise. So D, slide up a half step to the E flat, and then pinky goes up to F sharp, come back down a major 7 arpeg, G major 7. So F sharp, D, B, and G. So far we have. Alright, from there now we have our E flat major 7 arpeggio, starting on B flat on our 3rd string. Slide up a fret to the B, pinky on the D, back down. So now once we get to the D, we go down in E flat major 7 arpeggio. D, B flat, G with my middle finger, E flat with my ring finger. So, alright, then we repeat it down an octave. So now B again. So I'm starting with my pointer finger on F sharp, slide up to G, pinky on A sharp, pointer finger back to F sharp, middle finger on D sharp, and ring finger on B. I don't think I go down at the very end. So that's the whole pattern. So I'm pretty much always sliding the first note. Yeah, I'm picking every note except for the slide. So that's that pattern. Alright, this next one is pretty cool. So one of the main differences between the whole tone scale and the augmented scale is when you're doing a whole tone scale, as you might know, you can do augmented arpeggios and whole steps. Right, and that works. So you can't do that in the augmented scale, but you can do augmented arpeggios a half step apart. So. And that's what this pattern utilizes. So we start with a G augmented arpeggio. Once again, this is all in the G augmented scale. So G augmented, I'm doing this pattern G, then my middle finger jumps up 2 strings to the B, then middle finger goes to E flat or D sharp, whatever you want to call it, and back to G. Then I literally just slide down a half step, and I go down the augmented arpeggio from there. So F sharp, middle finger on D, middle finger on B flat, and then ring finger on F sharp. Maybe I'm slide from the G to the F sharp. Then I have to go up to the 4th position. Now I'm doing another G augmented arpeggio. So E flat, middle finger on G, pointer finger on B, E flat again, slide down a half step. And then it's D, B flat, F sharp, D. Then my pointer finger goes to D on the 3rd string. I'm sorry, not D, what I'm talking about, B. B, E flat, G, B, another augmented, down a half step, so B flat, F sharp, D, B flat. So this is cool, it gives you all these different, whether or not you're familiar with these, it might give you some new fingerings for doing augmented arpeggios because we're kind of compressing it all into one position, so we're getting a lot of different fingerings going on. Then I go up to the 5th position. I put my pointer finger on G. It's G, B, E flat, G, slide down a half step, F sharp, D, ring finger on B flat, and right here my pointer finger jumps down to the F sharp. So, Alright, right, this one sounds really cool. So once again, we're back to 3 different arpeggios going up in major thirds. In this case, we're doing major 7 sharp 5 arpeggios starting on the 7th. So if we look at this first one, if we analyze what's going on there, it's a B major 7 sharp 5 arpeggio. B, D sharp, G, A sharp. But by starting on the 7th, we get that little hammer on, and that's what creates that cool kind of almost sweep-like ascending sound. So I would recommend just doing that first. Just get comfortable going between that. Start with your middle finger on the A sharp and hammer on to the B with your ring finger. Then you put your middle finger on D sharp, pointer finger on G, and when you get to the G, you hammer on with your pinky to the A sharp. So it's a 5-note pattern, right? So quintuplets. And then you literally just move that pattern up in major thirds. So we did B major 7 sharp 5. Now we do E flat. I should be saying D sharp because of technically that's what it would be if it's a third, but I prefer just thinking E flat. So middle finger on D. So E flat major 7 sharp 5. So I start on the D now with my middle finger. Hammer on to E flat with the ring finger. Pointer finger on G. I'm sorry, middle finger on G. Pointer finger on B, and then I hammer on to D. So far I have. Then I stay in that position. Now I go to G major 7 sharp 5. So I start with my pointer finger on F sharp, hammer on to G. Then on the next 2 strings, pointer finger on B, pointer finger on D sharp. Hammer on the pinky to the F sharp. So. And then the last one, B major sharp 5 again. I go down to 3rd position, pointer finger on A sharp, hammer on to B. Middle finger on D sharp, pointer finger on G, hammer on to A sharp. You could do it backwards too. Okay, this next one is very similar in terms of what's going on arpeggio-wise to the last one, right? It's major 7 sharp 5 arpeggios going down in major thirds once again, but like I said in one of the previous lines, right, we're adding a little note in between to kind of just mix it up so it doesn't sound like a straight arpeggio thing. So if we just take away this, if we just look at it's a B major 7 sharp 5 arpeggio. A sharp, G, D sharp, B. So all we're doing is we're starting on the A sharp and we pull off to G. Then we pick the B, 1 fret higher, with our pinky and then pull off again. So, and then A sharp, pull off to G, middle finger on D sharp, middle finger on B. So that's the major 7 sharp 5 arpeggio right there. Okay, and then we just move the same thing to G now. So now we have F sharp, pull off to D sharp, G, pull off to D sharp, pinky back on F sharp, pull off to D sharp, middle finger on B, I'm sorry, pointer finger on B, middle finger on G. Alright, same thing now with E flat major 7 sharp 5, so pinky on D, pull off to B, pick E flat, pull off to B again, pick D, pull off to B, and then middle finger goes to G, ring finger goes to E flat. Then take that same exact fingering and just move it up a string and up a fret. So now start on the 8th fret. This is our B major 7 sharp 5 arpeggio again. So pinky on A sharp, pull off to G, then pick B, pull off to G again, and then pick A sharp, pull off to G, D sharp with your middle finger, ring finger on B. So. Okay, here's another arpeggio one for you. So this one's a little bit different. So just to review everything that we've talked about so far in terms of arpeggios that you can use in this scale, we have a couple different ones. We can do major arpeggios in major thirds, minor arpeggios in major thirds, major 7 sharp 5 arpeggios in major thirds, and just regular major 7 arpeggios in major thirds. So another one that I discovered when I was going through the scale that also works is minor major 7 arpeggios in major thirds. So that's why I always recommend, just breaking down scales, doing them in as many intervals, as many arpeggio patterns as you can, because you come up with all these cool things that you might not have realized. So this one, we're going to start on G. We're just doing minor major 7 arpeggios right off of each root note in major thirds. So G, pinky hammer on to B flat, ring finger goes to D, and middle finger goes to F sharp. Okay, then I move that same thing to the next string. I go to B, pinky hammer on to D, ring finger on F sharp, middle finger on A sharp. Okay, and then go up to E flat minor major 7 arpeggio. So I'm up in the 6th position. I put my pointer finger on E flat, pinky hammers on to G flat, ring finger on B flat, middle finger on D. So we got. Okay, and then from there I go to G on the next string, G, pinky hammer on to B flat, then just ring finger on D and F sharp. Okay, and this last one I do kind of a weird fingering. For this B minor major 7, I don't really prefer just the couple ways you can do this. You can just bar the pinky or you can just bar the ring finger. I prefer to use both. I think with this particular pattern it's a little more clear. So I do that. I do my pointer finger on B, and then I hammer on the D with my ring finger, and then I put my pinky on F sharp, and then middle finger on A sharp. So it's a little weird at first, but just keep doing it and then you'll get comfortable with it. So all right, this next one I actually got from some of those Meshuggah solos that I transcribed. I noticed that Frederick has a lot of augmented like one string like fingerings that he weaves in and out of that I would notice a lot. So basically I just kind of took some of the fingerings that I encountered in some of his solos and tried to just expand it so I can get like a little pattern going across a couple different strings. So this one, I noticed he would do this a lot, like the 3 fret stretch and then the 1 fret, so like the ring and pinky, which is a little uncomfortable, definitely a little bit awkward on the hand. Pointer finger on G, then your ring finger hammers on to B flat, and then your pinky hammers on to B. Okay, and then from there, then I jump up. I'm jumping up 2 strings. I jump to F sharp with my pointer finger on the 4th string, and this was another pattern I saw him do, which is the reverse of that. So then it's pointer finger on F sharp, middle finger on G, and then your pinky goes up to B flat. Okay? And then from there you jump up to E flat on the 2nd string. And then it's the same pattern that we did at the beginning. The 3 fret and then the 1 fret. So pointer finger on E flat, ring finger on F sharp, hammer on the pinky to G. Then just bring it down. This one is much easier with distortion. Okay, this next one is based off of the same thing we were just talking about, minor major 7 arpeggios in major thirds, but we're leaving out the 5th of each of these, so it's just 1, 3, and 7. And the way I came up with this one was I was trying to just experiment with some like chord voicings to work in the augmented scale, and I was doing this 1 flat 3 7 and moving in major thirds. Wild sound, and then I was just like, all right, I could just arpeggiate them. So I changed the fingering a little bit so it doesn't look completely like it's coming out of chords, because I wanted it to line up in as close to a few different positions as possible. So I start with my ring finger on G, so this is G minor major 7 without the 5. So G, pointer finger on B flat, pinky on F sharp. Then I go to the next position. Now I'm on B. I put my pointer finger on B, pinky on D, and middle finger jumps up 2 strings to A sharp. Then I go back to like the same fingering I did on the G, but I start on E flat. So ring finger on E flat, pointer finger on G flat, pinky on D. then I go to my middle finger on G, pointer finger on B flat, and then pinky up on G. Then we go to B, middle finger on B, pointer finger on D, pinky on A sharp, and then just move that up to E flat. Middle finger on E flat, pointer finger on G flat, pinky on D. Okay, now we got a fourths pattern. I love the sound of fourths. Anytime I'm doing any type of scale, I always try to, break it down and see if there's any spots where you can throw in some fourths, because I think it always has a really interesting open kind of sound. And I noticed with this one that you can do fourths, perfect fourths in major thirds. Okay, and that's a cool sound. And once again, any of these can be used as chords too. Okay, so this one, we start the fourths that we're starting with are F sharp and B. So we start with our B, and pinky on B. I'm sorry, pinky on B, pinky on F sharp. Then we go down to D and G, but instead of going, we reverse the pattern, so it's going down and then up as far as like the direction of the pattern. So B, F sharp, D, G. Now I'm doing E flat and B flat for my fourths, so then I do E flat, B flat, and then the next set of fourths is going to be F sharp and B, so I do F sharp and B. And then I think I move my middle finger to the next set of fourths, which is G and D, and then I have B flat and E flat, okay, with my ring finger, and then I move down my pointer finger to B and F sharp, so... I just do it all in one position. Pinky, pointer, middle, ring, pinky, pointer. Okay, this is a cool Scott Henderson one that I got from his solo on Footprints, which I transcribed. If you want to check that out, I'll put the link in the description. And he's actually using this over a minor chord, so I'll explain how an augmented scale can work over a minor chord. And it's another really great way to get more of an outside kind of sound. But so we're starting with our middle finger on G, pull off to F sharp, and then we jump down and put our ring finger on B on the third string, pull off to B flat, and then hammer on back to the B. Alright, so it's... And then pointer finger goes to F sharp, and then your middle finger goes to B flat, hammer on to B. That's basically the pattern, and you're moving that down in major thirds. So, and then you set your middle finger on E flat in the second string, pull off to D, and then down 2 strings, ring finger on G, pull off to F sharp, hammer back on to G, back up to the D, then F sharp and G. Then it's middle finger on B, pull off to B flat, ring finger jumps down to E flat on the second string, pull off to D, hammer back on to E flat, up to B flat, middle finger back to D, hammer on to E flat. And the last one, middle finger on G, pull off to F sharp, and then on the 6th string you put your middle finger on B, pull off to B flat, hammer back onto B, pointer finger on F sharp, then middle finger on B flat, ring finger on B, middle finger on E flat, pointer finger on D, pull off. So okay, so in this case, this is actually the same key that he is doing it in Footprints. He's doing it in a higher position, but So he's using this over a C minor chord. So basically, if you want to use an augmented scale to sound a little bit more outside over a minor chord, play the augmented scale off of the 5 of whatever key you're in. So if we're in the key of C minor, the 5, right, is G, right? So you play a G augmented scale over C minor. So I'll get a C minor chord in the background so you can hear what this lick sounds like over C minor. Alright, and the reason why it works but also sounds kind of outside is if you look at the scale in relation to C minor, you have your 5, flat 5, 3rd, 2nd, and then major 7 and flatted 7th. So those are all kind of notes that can all work over minor, right? But if you limit yourself to just that scale, then you're kind of leaving out the root and stuff like that. So you're only including very interesting sounding notes over the chord. So what we've discussed in this video is we have different arpeggio options going in major thirds over this scale, and then you can also utilize a scale over minor chords or major chords in the instance of this for a minor chord, and then the Jonathan Kreisberg pattern for the major chords. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you got a lot out of it. If you want to donate to the PayPal link in the description, if you do that, you can request any lesson video that you want or any song video, and I'll be happy to do it for you. And feel free to check out the live streams that I've been doing once a week. Any questions you want, just shoot them into the live chat. And yeah, so thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.